and welcome to the Compass PD podcast, where we dive into evidence-based practices and research-driven strategies that empower educators and leaders to make a lasting impact. I'm Dr. Carrie Hepburn, your host, alongside Dr. Stephanie Brenner. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Carrie.
I am really excited about what we're exploring today. We are going to be talking about the comprehensive standards guides or unpacked standards and how it can support the learning that many of our teachers and leaders are receiving through their LETRS training. And I know this is going to be a subject that resonates with many people, but I also know that this is a subject that is near and dear to Dr. Brenner's heart.
Yes, I could talk about LETRS training for hours upon hours with anybody who will listen. And we could also talk about the CSGs for hours and hours with anybody who could listen. So
Listen.
it would be, we could make this really long, but we're not. We're going to be like short and sweet.
Get ready. We're going to shock and awe people because we're going to use less words today. So,
Yes.
whether you're a teacher, administrator, or a district leader, our goal is to provide you with insights and tools that can help you navigate the complexities of education and inspire student success. What many of you may not know is that Dr. Stephanie Brenner was a LETRS trainer for her district that she served in. She was a LETRS trainer for many years. And
Mhm.
so our district started the training and utilizing the information to create our own phonics program, in-house created program. I
Yeah.
have to believe it was 15 years ago,
It was in
something.
2010.
Oh my goodness.
I know it because my first day of LETRS training was my first day back from maternity leave with Benjamin,
Your
my
youngest.
youngest
Oh my
son. So
gosh.
I know that it was 2010.
Well, and what I know, Stephanie, is that you talk about the training and to become a LETRS trainer was some of the most powerful professional learning you've ever received.
It is. I will for until maybe something greater will come, but that was probably the most transformational learning in my career as well. So
Mhm,
I loved the experience and the learning received in LETRS training.
mhm. I think one of the biggest problems that we run into
Mhm.
is that teachers receive the training and the training is the theory, the learning, the knowledge, but they really struggle with the implementation, the application of that learning in the classroom. What
Right.
do you think about that?
I think absolutely. And one of the reasons for that, I believe, is that as educators, we're used to going to professional learning development that is meant to be like, here, go do this tomorrow. Here's
Mhm,
this, here's a tip or a trick, go do this tomorrow.
mhm,
And LETRS, so we enter with that mindset or expectation. However, LETRS training is not that. LETRS is it's the literacy essentials for teachers of reading and spelling is the acronym
mhm,
for letter or the real title of LETRS. So, but LETRS is about growing teacher knowledge,
mhm,
educator knowledge. It is
mhm,
not about tips and tricks. There are
mhm.
tips and tricks embedded, but it is simply about growing your knowledge. It's like a college course of the things that you wish you would have got in college, quite
Right,
honestly.
right.
So um, then teachers struggle with, okay, here's all this learning. Now, what do I do to reflect this learning once I get to the classroom?
For sure. And I think something that we run into a lot is that people believe that they believe that it's like one more thing
Yes.
that is being added to their plate. So they don't understand the connection between their standards and the letters and how they fit together. And
Yes.
really, that's going to be what we're talking about today is
Right.
how they work together. You use the learning, growing your teacher knowledge to bring to life those standards. So we're going to talk about how teachers need to have that information from their unpacked standards. They need to understand what the common definitions and the vocabulary have definitions for that common vocabulary that are within their standards. They need to know their objectives, have learning progressions with implicit and explicit learning and those proficiency scales for every standard. So districts do that work sometimes in-house, and then we're seeing districts utilize our comprehensive standards guides. As Dr. Brenner mentioned, CSGs, for those of you, when you hear us say that, the CSGs. So you don't have to have the CSGs to do this, but you need to have your standards unpacked with definitions, pro progressions, and proficiency scales. So today, what we're going to talk about is really about how to implement the learning from letters,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how that aligns with your standards,
Right.
and how people that we work with, how they can utilize a tool like their comprehensive standards guides or your unpacked standards and your progression to bring
Mhm.
that letters training to life. So it's bringing that teacher knowledge and applying it in the classroom and making an impact.
Right.
So let's get started really quickly with the big question. How do you implement the learning gathered in letters training in the classroom?
My first suggestion, which is going to be probably the hardest,
Mhm,
is you have to determine your purpose, because the information you're getting is coming at you from many, many different angles. And so you need to decide, am I looking to do this learning in my whole group instruction? Am I looking to do this during intervention time only, in a small group instruction? Whatever part of the day, what are you thinking about? Where are you thinking about implementing this instruction? And you have to only pick one area to
mhm,
focus. It's days, hours worth of learning, and you have to pick just one area. So what's your purpose and what area are you focusing on? So for example, you might be the early elementary teachers or a preschool teacher, and you want to work on phonological awareness.
mhm,
You could be any teacher and want to work on the area of phonics. You could be like syllable types. That could be the thing that's resonating with you, and you want to focus on implementing instruction in syllable types. Or especially our older grades, maybe it's morphology. You're
mhm,
worried, you're going to concentrate on incorporating morphology instruction as your area of focus. So once you determine your purpose and you narrow it down to one
mhm,
focus, because you
mhm.
can't do all of that learning as I'm going to implement all of this.
Mhm,
You'll fail. Like
mhm.
learn from me. You can't do it. I tried. So that will be a failed attempt, and I don't want that to happen to you. So
Right. Well, and I think what we are able to do when we work with schools and districts is, like you mentioned, we did this in 2010, and we're almost 15 years from that. So we can talk to people about things, that predictable problems that they will face as
right.
they come out of this training, and help them avoid some of the
Correct.
mistakes that we made as a school district in our curriculum department, in our instruction, in the implementation. So, and
As
we've
a
done it more than,
right,
yeah,
right.
more than one time. So,
Yes. And as a coach, knowing like we have to narrow this focus down
yes.
and
Mhm,
also narrow the purpose. That's why I said,
mhm,
like, you need to know, are you doing this whole group, small group, or intervention time? So
mhm.
you can focus solely on that.
Yep.
So once you know where you're doing it, your purpose, and then also what area of focus you're going to have, then you need to decide one strategy to
Mhm,
implement. And I will tell you, like, the number of strategies that come out of letters training is astronomical. I wish that people could see my old notebooks and my manuals and all the things that I did, the things that I took notes on. So the strategies that are given might include, like, when you're doing phonological awareness, there's always a lot of tapping
Hmm.
of the individual sounds. There's orthographic mapping or sound mapping. So you're pushing little manipulatives up to
Hmm.
represent the sounds. Some of the other standard or strategies are given are routines for breaking big words apart. There are a lot of routines for phonological awareness practice, and how you might create anchor charts for things like affix, prefix, or suffix
Hmm.
maps and concept maps. So you need to pick one strategy. So you know where
Yes.
you're doing this, what your area of focus is, and what one strategy is that you're going to work on.
Hmm.
Um, so that you can start then to gather the things you need.
Right.
And one of the predictable problems that I run in that is I hear often from teachers, and I ran into this myself, is that when it's time to start gathering resources, and resources can be things like manipulatives and books and papers and the little charts that kids are going to need to do their mapping and their tapping. So it could be things, but it can also be other types of resources in the sense of, do I have a teacher's manual? Do I have something that's going to give me direction on what to say and what to do? And that's the predictable problem, I think, is like when it's time to gather resources, it that is a barrier for many people is, what is it that I use to help me know what to say while I'm trying to implement this strategy in this focused area?
Right.
And that is where your standards come in.
Yes.
If your district doesn't have a provided resource, and even if it does, using your unpacked standards where you get a very clear common definition of all the vocabulary, you get objectives that help you know what is it the kids need to know, what are they
Hmm.
supposed to be able to do for this one standard,
Hmm.
and the hierarchy of those skills, which comes
Right.
in the progressions, and then the proficiency scale so that you can assess. And
Yes.
if your district doesn't provide those, um, you can make, or you can unpack your own standards.
Yes.
And then some other things that you might need are district provided curriculum resources, and even some things that LETRS and that training provides a lot of research based, evidence based resources that
Hmm.
many of them are free, that they will
Hmm.
recommend that you can use as guidance for your instruction. Once you have some of those like physical things that you need,
Hmm.
um, you have to think about the assessment that you're going to use. And
Yes.
that is really an important step that might be missed,
Hmm.
because if you know your area of focus, you know the strategy, where do you start in
Hmm.
the instruction, and the assessment is going to help you know where to start. So having that really dependable assessment that actually assesses the standard that you're wanting to work on,
Right.
it is really important, because
Yes.
after you have the assessment, then you can decide, where do your kids fall in the progression of learning that's provided within the unpacked standard.
Right.
So in the CSGs, so I'm going to think through an example. So if I'm a second grade teacher and I pick the area of syllable instruction,
Hmm.
that that's my area of focus in my small groups. So I'm going to do small groups, syllable instruction, and the strategy that I'm going to use is breaking big words apart.
Hard.
So then I have some resources, and I give an assessment on like watching kids break words into syllables, asking
Hmm.
kids to read words aloud. Then I can start to gather some things that are going to help me do that instruction. But with my unpacked standard, I can look at the progression of where are kids in their syllable knowledge. Are
Hmm.
they only know open syllables? They only know closed syllables. They need instruction still on vowel, consonant, e syllables. Are there the
Hmm.
kids that need vowel team syllables, or
Hmm.
all in just one syllable versus kids who are ready to do that work in multiple syllables? So my unpack standard helps me see the progression, and I can say, oh, these kids are working on one syllable words with vowel teams.
Hmm.
These kids are doing two syllable words with vowel consonant E. These kids are in the progression of like three syllable words, and they're still needing help with consonant LE syllables.
Yes.
So then I have my groups,
Right.
and now
Right.
I can start the instruction
Yep.
that allows me to incorporate the learning about syllable types that I've learned from letters.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can start teaching kids how to notice those syllable
Hmm.
types, how
Hmm.
to find them to break words apart so they can read them. And when
Hmm.
they're writing, I can start how to use that knowledge while they're writing to write
Hmm.
words with multiple syllables. So
Hmm.
we have to do all of that pre type of
Yes.
work in order to get to the place where we can purposefully plan our instruction that incorporates all of the learning I now have as an adult about syllable types.
Yes. Yes. When you think about a progression, what's so nice is if you have a really strong, you need a really strong vertical alignment of that
Right.
progression that aligns with the standards. And then teachers have the information that they need. So if they need to go to a different grade level,
Yeah.
depending on where kids are falling, they
Mhm.
can use that information from that unpacked standard, that grade level, and then the information from letters to
Yes.
responsively teach based on where the kids are. So we do see a lot of people when you start to understand that vertical progression, you start to understand your standards, and then you have all this
Mhm.
amazing knowledge from letters, what you can do. And it's key. You have to make sure it's all vertically aligned. Now you have the power that you can intervene or you can extend because you're seeing how they fit together. They aren't isolated
Correct.
pieces that
Right.
are adding more to your plate. It's like empowering you. I love
Yes.
that.
Because every class, like if I go back to my second grade class,
Hmm.
there's not a second grade class in the country that has kids who are only at a second grade level.
Yes, right.
There are kids in every second grade class that are at a first grade level, and I would even
Hmm.
dare say a kindergarten level, and a
Hmm.
third grade level, and a fourth grade level. So the standards, the unpacked standards, or the CSGs, help teachers have the knowledge of K to 4, even though I'm a
Yes,
second grade teacher,
right,
so that
right.
I can determine where my
Hmm.
students are in that progression of learning.
Yes.
And then I can teach using the strategies I'm learning in letters.
Hmm.
And so I know that I'm gonna have kids, or my instruction needs to include a lot of repetition, a ton of
Hmm.
repetition. I have to do a
Hmm.
lot of modeling. I have to use
Yep.
some of the kinesthetics. I know that my language has to be very clear, direct, and explicit. We're not doing
Hmm.
like guessing game kind of instruction.
Right.
And I'm learning these things from letters. I'm also
Yes.
learning about syllable types myself as an adult.
Hmm.
I can say those exact things to the kids.
Right.
And that's where the power comes, is now that
Yes.
I know where my kids are in that progression of learning. Now I know what to say to them, and I
Hmm.
can plan really purposely for that.
I love that.
A predictable problem I would suggest that teachers help keep themselves out of this, because before you teach, when it's time to do that planning, um, you have to determine ahead of time, what are you going to say and what
Hmm.
examples are you going to use, because you can kind of quickly get yourself in trouble, and it's really hard to come up with examples on the
Yeah.
fly that
Yes.
help kids practice things like hearing sounds and words, or blending sounds, or taking sounds away, or different syllable type words that have the different syllable types. You have to plan that ahead of time, um, so that you're really well prepared, and
Yes.
um, you don't get yourself into a place where you have kids add a sound or take away a sound, and it accidentally makes an inappropriate word.
That and that happens. It's happened. It's happened.
Happening
It's
more times than
probably happened in my second and third grade class a time or two.
I mean,
So
and it's so
learn
un
from our mistakes.
you're like all of a sudden like, oh wait, no, never mind, don't say that. Don't blend
Yes.
those sounds.
Yes, for sure. Oh, I love it. So good.
There is such power in all of the information that comes from letters training.
Hmm.
And it there's so much that without a plan and without a
Yes.
focus,
Mhm.
it can be paralyzing
Yes.
because you don't know where to start.
Yes. It's not about the application, it's about increasing your content knowledge. Yes,
Yes.
I agree.
And there are, I think if I had to put a name on the biggest barrier that keeps teachers from implementing the learning in their classrooms, it is the systems within our school districts
Mm-hmm.
are not in place to support teachers' implementation of the learning. So the system being like, do teachers have the opportunity in their PLC time
Mm-hmm.
to collectively pick an area of focus, picking
Hmm.
one strategy, collectively gathering the resources and being able to plan together, and collectively have good assessments at their fingertips,
Hmm.
and then good resources that help them implement the
Right.
instruction as well. So that the systems are often one of the barriers that keep teachers from implementing the instruction in their classrooms as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, I agree. This was so good, Stephanie. I think some things that I took away, it's really important to help create systems, like you mentioned, that allow our teachers the opportunity for purposeful planning and
Yes.
purposeful implementation. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of steps that are required to bring that letters training to life in the classroom. It's going to take time
Yeah.
based on our experience because like we mentioned, we've done this for a while. And with thousands of teachers
Yeah.
over 15 years and being in a school district that was a suburban large school district. So we can we talk with people a lot about it, but we want to narrow that focus so we're not trying to do all of the things and we
Right.
need to show how that works and aligns with what you're doing with your standard work. It's not
Mhm.
something separate. And making a plan ahead of time, not trying to do it in the moment, is
Mhm.
critical.
Yes.
Did I
It,
get kind of the big ideas there?
you nailed the big ideas. Yes, there is so much that without a purposeful plan, it'll be wasted learning, which is
Mhm.
incredibly unfortunate.
Yes, yes. You don't want this to be a box checked on off the
No,
list. You want
no,
this to be applied, this learning to be applied. And it doesn't have to mean that you purchase a resource. We've
correct.
done it time and again,
Yes.
and seen great growth, which actually we got some really great news today. But that I'll share that with you later. Dr. Brenner from recently from school districts. So we want to thank you for joining us
Can
on the
I say
Compass
one more
PD.
thing? Can I
Yeah,
say one more thing? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
it's okay.
You said something that really struck me that I want to make sure that we're really clear to is that Letters isn't a program that you implement.
Mhm.
And I think that's a huge misconception that
Yes,
people are like, oh, we're doing letters. You're,
yes, yep,
you're not doing letters, you're learning
right,
information.
right.
Um, you might start incorporating some of those practices in your curriculum,
Hmm.
but letters is about growing teacher knowledge. It is
Yes.
not a resource to be implemented. It is teacher
Hmm.
knowledge to be implemented that is
Hmm.
based on research and it's evidence based as
Yes.
well. This information is not new.
Hmm.
It is, I mean, we did it in 2010, and it is from, they have changed they've updated because that's just who they are.
Yes.
Um, the authors of this are updating the information. However, we've known the science of this research for decades,
Yes.
and it's finally getting in teachers' hands.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the exciting thing. So it's
Hmm.
the approach of I'm growing as an adult, as a teacher, my own knowledge of how to teach reading, writing, and
Right.
spelling to my students.
Hmm.
I'm not going to this training to implement a new program,
Right.
going to
Right.
grow as an adult and a professional.
Hmm.
So
No,
you said
thank
something
you.
and I was like, oh wait, I want to make sure that we end on we're clear that it's not a program you're implementing. It is the mindset of growing my knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you for the explicitness.
Yeah.
We're kind of
Telling you, I
nerdy.
learned a lot.
Yeah, I know. I know. I really appreciate it. I was a teacher. I did not become a trainer, so I was in the teaching role as we were going through this and then in the curriculum role when
Yeah.
we went through it again. So I appreciate it. And I could do it again and again. Every time I gain something new. Thank you for joining us on the Compass PD podcast. Remember, at Compass PD, we believe that every educator has the power to inspire change and transform student learning. Stay focused, stay inspired, and keep making a difference.